Welcome to Sober on Purpose, the show where emotional sobriety and the messy reality of loving someone with addiction meet. We're here to help you discover peace, purpose, and healing through Jesus, no matter how chaotic life feels. Welcome to the Sober on Purpose podcast. I have a very special guest today. We met when he was interviewing me on his podcast, and I'll let Eli tell you more about that. His process was so unique that I went, wait a minute. I want to know more about that. And it dovetails into some things that we've been talking about as far as emotions, emotional sobriety. And I don't know that I've shared this on this podcast. I am dyslexic, have been diagnosed for over 25 years now, and have figured out that probably ADHD matches up with that. So Eli Devante, tell us a little bit more about your podcast and the building of your podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me on. I mean, it's less than a week we've known each other, really, and we hit it off straight away, probably because we're very similar, which worries me a bit considering we're talking on the same podcast. So I don't know how this is going to turn out, but we'll try and let's go with the flow. So, Diary of a Dyslexic Strategist is what I call the podcast. And the reason why I called it that is because I'm dyslexic and I wanted to help as many people as possible who are neurodivergent. And I struggled for so many years since I was a child, since I can remember. And I didn't take many opportunities that were put before me because I didn't think I was good enough. I realized I could. And I didn't take those opportunities further. But only recently have I taken on those challenges and thought, you know what, I'm going to make a difference. I don't want anybody else to suffer and to go through what I did for so long. It's just too long. So I thought, okay, this is what we're going to do. So 3 months ago, I started this podcast to help as many people as possible from an entrepreneur point of view. Anybody that's striving to better themselves, who has issues, to know that anybody that is listening, as much as you think it's not possible, well, look at these entrepreneurs. They've got similar things wrong with them. And they've gone through dark days and they still go through dark days and they're still successful. So that's how I came about putting that together and coming towards this journey.
Let me back you up, Eli, just a little bit. Can you give us a definition of neurodivergent? That's a word that's really just emerging. I've actually heard it more in the UK than I've heard it here in the States.
Yeah, I mean, neurodivergent basically is, I'll try and just simplify it, but it's just when you're beyond the norm, or what they call the norm. It's trying to put us in a box that we're different. So people that have got a memory problem or have a problem with actual writing and other issues like that, then we're called neurodivergent. Now, I tend to use it not because I like using it, but it's a very simple and quick way of saying we're different, which is a good thing.
Yes.
Different is good. So I am proud to be neurodivergent, for want of a better word, because difference is good. That makes you unique, which means if you want to do business, you stand out from the crowd. If you want to have a relationship one-to-one, you stand out from the crowd. As long as you embrace who you are and you're proud of who you are.
And that's what you're doing with the podcast. I mean, I could read lists of people, but you've got highly successful people. You're talking about procrastination and ADHD. You're talking about autism and ADHD. You're talking about how parents are helping their children, the real truth about social anxiety. What were some things that created social anxiety for you or created issues for you when you were trying to do things as a kiddo, when you were growing up?
Well, the issue I had was really the writing side and just remembering things, because I have a memory like a fish. Trust me. I have a memory like a fish. Even now, when I'm speaking to you, I'm thinking, what is your name? And then your name will pop into my head a few moments later,
Yes.
even though I mentioned your name before. So yeah, I had the memory of a fish. So when I was at school, it was very, very difficult. I didn't focus. A reason why I didn't focus because I couldn't do the work, not because I was stupid, but it was a problem that I had dyslexia, which I didn't know I had at the time. I had
Mm,
dyslexia. So what tended to happen is I would look on a page and there would be times where it felt like the letters were swimming, right?
mm, mhm,
And it was very hard to focus. So of course, I played up at school. Um, I had one teacher in particular she couldn't quite get me because she goes, Eli, you're just such an intelligent guy, but you're just wasting the time. You just don't do the work, etc. So when Parent Day came up, and my parent came to find out how well I was doing, it's always, I don't know what's wrong with him. He's a very intelligent guy, but. And so it was very, very hard for me and difficult for me. So, and I didn't know until later on that I had dyslexia when I left school and then went to college. And
yes.
if I had the support from then, my life would have been so much easier. But I don't regret what happened
Mm,
at all because it's made me the person I am today. And I know it's very strange to say that, but it has. But no, those are the problems I had, which was the memory, which was really, really difficult. And then obviously, when it came to spelling words, things floating, God, that was so difficult. When I think about it now, it was very hard.
it is. Now, I learned this. So I was diagnosed as a college student too. Although we knew something was up when I was reversing B's and D's, 4s and 7s, all those types of things.
Mhm.
I didn't have the language to share what was going on in my head. Like you said, the words were swimming.
Mm.
When did you get I don't think at 9 you had the language to share that with your parent, with a caregiver, with a teacher. When did you get the language to be able to describe what's going on when you look at a page?
To be honest, I really didn't share it with family. I kept it to myself.
Mhm.
So obviously, when family was disappointed with why don't you study, why don't you this, that, and the other, I kept it to myself. It was just, I don't know whether it was feeling shame
Mhm.
or feeling awkward, but unfortunately, I kept it to myself. So I suppose that from a family point of view, it seemed like I was being lazy.
Mm.
Um, and as I said, when I left, I then did something about it, but I wish I had communicated exactly how it felt and what was going on at the time. So when you talk about the communication side of it, the language side of it, yeah, when I think about it now, and unfortunately, I didn't really communicate how tough things were.
Mhm.
So that my mother and my father at the time could quite understand what was going on. But it is what it is. We live and learn.
Yeah. Well, when you have these kind of things going on, what kind of coping skills did you develop? What kind of out of the box thinking did you develop to manage? You've got stress, you've still got work like all the other children. How did you begin to manage all that?
I didn't, to be honest. I just accepted I was what I was. The work just didn't get done. Um, and um, yeah, there wasn't anything in particular. I mean, look, one thing I was very good from communicating, as in I could communicate from good English, like I speak well now, and that was
Yeah.
only due to my mother. You must say your T's properly. You must say the shoulds and blah 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 blah. Now I'm very good at that. Now you
Uh-huh.
can hear me, the way I speak. That's due to my mother, and I thank her for that. So it was very good when it came to being articulate
Mhm.
from that point of view. But when it came to coping and trying to see if I can just get away with doing some of the work and whatever, to be honest, I didn't really cope. It's just a situation. I just didn't do the work.
Mhm.
And that was quite sad, really. But what I got out of it, I got alternative skills because of those issues I had.
So what were some of the alternative skills?
Well, the alternative skills was the communicating side of it. I was very good at listening and talking and, and actually reading people's body language.
Mhm.
Because I didn't have the skill of writing correctly or reading on paper, I had to find alternative things. So I never knew this at the time, but obviously I had to build up other skills, such as being able to communicate verbally, reading people's body language. So as I got older, I was very, very good at communicating, especially with women, because
Mhm.
women are quite advanced too. And at the time, as I was growing up, majority of my friends, if not all of my friends, and my best friend was always women.
Mhm.
And women tend to be more mature and advanced. And I learned a lot from women or my women friends at the time. So I was very close in that way. And I learned the skill to actually communicate, because women are very good at communicating. They're good at showing their feelings and etc. And I think, yeah, that's part of my journey. That's where I got my skill to be able to listen and communicate.
And that's when we were discussing your podcast, Eli's method is really different from a lot of podcasters, and it's similar to mine. So describe your method of podcasting and how you make that happen in a way that
Yeah.
works for you.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy because I only started the podcast approximately 3 months ago, and I got into a circle of people that have been in the game for many a year and at the top of their game. And they advised me, you have to have your questions. You have to, edit your scripts somewhat. You have to. And I thought to myself, there is no way I'm going to be able to do that. I can't even remember a list. If you put a list in front of me, by the time the podcast comes out, I'm going to go, ah. All right,
Uh-huh.
that's not going to work. It's not going to happen. So I thought to myself, all right, Eli, think. Now, I'm a tech guy. I've been in tech, online tech, for the last 25, 30 years. So I thought to myself, right, keep it simple. What am I trying to achieve? I'm trying to achieve to help as many people as possible to hear the solutions to help them get over stagnation,
Mhm.
etc., while being neurodivergent. So what matters? Just the message. All right. So I just need to get the right people and have the right conversations. And as long as they can hear us, that's good enough. So I kept it simple. So I forgot about the list. All I did, I made sure I validated the people by contacting them by writing the correct, how can I say, exactly what I was interested in the person. So when I contacted them and said, I'm interested, meeting so, blah, 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 blah. So I knew that anybody that answers back will be the right person. And then I just put a Google Meet up and have a connected live in real time. And I never edit my podcast. I literally just have a normal conversation with a person, not knowing who they are and what they do, to be honest. Because it
Yes.
got
So say that again. You don't know us when we come on your
no,
podcast.
not at all. And I think I said the same thing to you as I said to everybody else. I said, please forgive me. And I say this every time, but I really don't know what you do. I don't know what your background is. I don't know. And I said the reason being is because I've got a memory like a fish, and having a list will be a nightmare. And so everybody, and I think like you would, oh, what really? What really? And I said, yeah, I don't have a clue who you are. Because it got to a stage I was doing 3 podcasts a day because I was loving it. And
Mhm.
so my method was literally I'd get on a Google Meet, connect it live, um, connect with people that I had never spoken to before. And I treated it like I would treat anybody that I meet in a room, online, on a phone. And I just had a conversation. And all I start the podcast with is, please tell me what you do to help your clientele. And that is it. And from there, the conversation just takes, and I have a conversation like I would as if he was just in front of me. And hence, my method was simple. People like it because the feedback I got was, oh my God, that's so much better than just having the same boring old questions. And I feel like I have to perform all the time. But with you, Eli, we just had a conversation and it just went in the right direction. And yes, and I don't edit the podcast. They literally are as is. And when it's time to release the podcast, I just put it up as is. And if any mistakes are made, that's the way it should be. I'm organic. I don't like noughts and ones, digital, perfection. I don't think perfection is the way to go, especially with AI and all these things are going. So I'm proud to be a person that still has the skill set to have just a conversation, just to find out what you're all about, and to try and find out what the essence of the person is, how they got their strengths to be able to be a good business owner. Because what I have found in life, for you to be very successful in life, you have to go through, as my dad would say, your trials and tribulations. Yeah, it comes part and parcel of being successful. And so I just want people to understand, I know you're in pain, I know you're in difficulty, but they are doing the same thing as you. They're in pain and in difficult, but they're being consistent. By holding in there, you can be successful too. So that's how simple my process is.
And let me frame that in that the adversity you faced with the writing, the memory, all those, and not talking to people about it, because having raised a child with dyslexia and ADHD, he didn't have the language to share with me. I mean, we went to professionals and we got some help, but he just didn't have the language to say, Mom, the words are falling off the page. So you took that adversity, built these alternative skills, and then you can show up at this podcast, and it is a wonderful experience. So if you want to share your dyslexic ADHD experience with Eli, get in touch with him, because it's a wonderful experience. He's a great listener. He asks awesome questions, and he brings things out in a communicative style. You don't feel like you're some podcasts you can feel like you're being put on trial. Well, why are you doing that? And what's that about? And that's not it. Yeah. And it's what I want to bring out of this is that when we are hiding, when we are saying, oh, I'm not good enough, or I don't have the skills, we're not realizing these alternative skills we've developed to cope. And those guys can really make us shine if we're willing to bring them forward. And we were talking before we got on here about the difficulty of writing, and I told you that I don't see the A's, the ands, the thes, the connector words, and so reading an email from me is like reading a fill in the blank. I still write emails, and just like you, the people that I want to invite to be part of my life are the ones who say, I get it. It's okay. I can fill in the blanks there. What you are bringing is really needed, because especially as I'm watching it through my son's eyes, he really needs to hear that, okay, maybe memorizing dates and names and numbers and regurgitating that in academia is not my skill. He's a great mechanic. He's a fantastic kinesthetic builder. So give us some more about what we're going to find on your podcast. Who have you really enjoyed interviewing, and what have they brought to your audience, to your life? What are you finding?
All of them are great. And I'm not saying that to just simplify the whole situation. I was having this conversation actually the last 24 hours. I have learned so much. It's like I've gone to university. Instead of taking 3 years to learn all these different ways of engaging and solutions to get over certain problems. I've learned myself with people that are at the top of their game, and that's been gold to me. But more importantly, I love the idea that I just get the right people from the point of view is they don't have a particular job. The point is that they have a similar road from the point of view where they are neurodivergent in one way or the other, and they followed their path in such a way for them to be successful with their end game. It doesn't matter what they got. So what you'll find in my podcast, like for instance, today I did a podcast with a tech man, and he does automation because that's what I do. I help people save time within their business, and I motivate my clients to make sure they stay focused on what they need to achieve online. So I did a podcast with him, and he does automation. And I've done a podcast with a woman that does well-being and meditation and yoga. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant from my point of view what they do. But what is more important is their journey and what I've learned from it. And plus the people that listen on my podcast has got to learn that it's not what your goal is. The point is it's your journey. Just focus on the journey. There is a process to it for you to be successful. So the short answer is I don't have really a favorite because there's always something I take away and the listeners take away every single time because of I don't ask the same questions over and over again. So you're going to get similar answers over and over again. I have a conversation. So if you listen to every podcast I do, there's always something completely different to take away from because I follow their journey in real time because I have a real-time conversation. So even me, I don't listen to anybody's podcast anymore. I listen to my own. I go, oh my God, Eli, that was really good, that question you asked. And I forgot I answered. And then when I listen to their answer, I learn so much. I think, oh, that's amazing. So the format that I've created for myself, I think works great because every single person I have a conversation with brings something completely different to the table because it's like a bespoke conversation. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And my experience for my own self has been, I'm going to say this and it's going to sound weird. I feel like a blackout speaker sometimes in the sense that I'm having this great conversation, but like you, I'll go back and listen to it and go, oh, I did really say that. Or, oh, they said that.
Totally.
It's coming out, but it's not necessarily holding in here.
That's right. Exactly.
Remember what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's not, I know our brains are magnificent and we barely use part of them. What I've found is, and you talk about this in a couple different episodes, especially in the one on procrastination, which is a great one. Everybody should go listen to it. With folks who are dealing with addiction, and sometimes addiction comes on because of the neurodivergent anxiety. We use, you go to a party and you have your first alcoholic drink and you're like, oh, suddenly I'm the life of the party. This is great. I feel less inhibited, right? Also, what I found over the years of doing the Sober on Purpose podcast is folks who can hyper focus, which is typically a neurodivergent who can hyper focus. If you're trying to get something, if you're trying to get a substance, if you're trying to get work done, if you're trying to get that done, and you move into this addiction style mode and addictive behavior, you hyper focus until it's done, right? That often makes a great entrepreneur. Because they're like, this one little thing, and I'm going to go after it until I succeed. And she talks about it in the procrastination. What has been your experience as an entrepreneur with a neurodivergent mindset? How have you managed that?
Sorry, I lost you there for the last 5 seconds.
What has been your experience as a neurodivergent and an entrepreneur? How has that played into helping you be a better entrepreneur with hyperfocus?
Right. Well, acceptance came in, which happened 2 years ago, I struggled for a long time. So I've been doing business online. Imposter syndrome kicked in for a long time. And so I did one thing to another. So I started in IT, building computers, stuff like that. Then I came online, was a programmer, marketing, and I did loads of different things. But I didn't have the confidence to be consistent, to follow things through as a business owner. And not until approximately 2 years ago, I thought to myself, enough is enough. I'm sick to death of people coming to me and saying, Eli, you're just amazing. Why don't you this and why don't you that? And I used to will say, well, I don't like my face and I don't like my voice and I really don't want to, do, but you're a great teacher. So not until I accepted 2 years ago, and I thought enough is enough. I said, I've got to do something about it. Right. Obviously, there must be a method to their madness when they're saying to me, Eli, Eli, Eli. And so I started down the path in trying to build my confidence in showing my face, using my voice, etc. And once I accepted who I was, and that's the point, once I accepted who I was, then I knew who my clientele was. People like me. I have an understanding to be able to see problems in real time and patterns. And so when I then accepted who I was, and I wanted to help as many people like me as possible, and then I saw, and it is a cliche, I saw my gift as a superpower, because I was able to see a situation. And I think, how did I work that out? I would speak to a client, and within 10 minutes, I always solve an issue and a problem. Most of the time, I understand why I've come to resolve their issue and say, look, this is what you need to do. But there were some times when I didn't know how I got to that, because I'm able to see patterns. And I thought, my God, do you know how many people would like that gift? Do you know how many people have to go to university and they have to do this and they have to do that? And I'm able to just have a conversation, again, the same format, have a conversation, listen, start the process, and there you go, 10 minutes later, problem solved. And so when I accepted my gift of who I was, and it was okay to be who I was, and it was okay to be unique, then I started to absorb that skill and use it with my clientele. And I found, and it's so easy, it's such a breeze, because all I'm dealing with is solutions that I've had to deal with all my life. So it's very easy for me to resolve. And because I've been in the online tech space, and be it marketing, etc., all I used the experience that I've had in the last 30 years, plus with my gift, put it together, and it's easy peasy. I just can't believe it. If I knew it was that easy, I would have come to the table a long time.
The acceptance piece, let's dig just a little bit deeper. What do you think kept you from accepting this as a gift?
I don't know. I think it could be environment. Maybe it was environment when I was growing up, and I had a good family, always very positive. They're very motivational. That's where I get that skill from. But for some reason, and I think maybe it's a situation partly because I didn't know my biological father. I think that may have been part of it, but my grandfather stepped in, and he was an amazing father. I miss him to this day. He was amazing. But I think by keeping everything to myself, so people couldn't quite understand, so family couldn't quite understand, I didn't get the support that was needed and the push that was needed. I mean, my mother helped massively with so many different things, but if I had communicated that much more, things may have been different. So then, well, obviously, when I got out of school, things were already ingrained in me where I'm not good enough. I can't. I will not. And so when that happened, I think that was part of the process of me not accepting. And so when I also, and I suppose the lack of belong, and most people have the same feeling as the lack of belonging.
Mm-hmm.
When I used to work for businesses, and I was always rejected with my colleagues because the way I would analyze and speak and etc., they would always say, "Why are you here? Why aren't you somewhere else?" Like in a management status and stuff like that. Because again, I had a great brain. I knew how to speak. I knew how to, and so I was always rejected. And it
Right.
was never a big thing at the time, or I thought it wasn't a big thing at the time, but not until recently have I thought, okay, rejection, rejection, rejection. So this is part of my journey that held me back. And it's not them or someone else that's held me back. It is me that's held me
Yes.
back, basically.
Yes.
It's me not accepting who I am. You don't have to be as clever as anyone else, or you don't have to speak as well as anybody else, or you don't have to, we all have our gifts, our strengths. All right. The main thing is we look at our strengths, we build on those strengths and capitalize on those strengths. Yes, we have our weaknesses. We can either work with those weaknesses or you get someone to help you with those weaknesses and take it on. If you're a business owner, for instance, then you get a virtual assistant or you get someone to work and deal with those weaknesses while you
Mm-hmm.
work with your strengths. There's always a way around it. But the main thing is accept you can't be great at everything. It's not, and that's not life. Life is not
Right.
built that way for you to be great at everything.
Right.
Everybody has their strengths. So just as you have a team, you have a team of people that have strengths in particular places. But when you come together like a team, you really are something to be not messed with as a team. It's just so simple. Life is so simple. So the thing is, I don't try to be the best at everything.
Mm.
Perfection is what I've always tried to strive. I had this conversation with a friend about 4 hours ago. Actually, she said to me, "Your problem is when you start a project, or you wanted to start something, you want it to be perfect all the time, perfect, perfect, perfect." And I said, "Yeah, I've changed that mindset because the thing is, you don't know perfection until you take the first step.
Yes.
You
Yes.
have to go through a process."
My personal coach has just said to me, in America at least, we are ready, fire, aim, right? He
Yeah.
said that's the wrong way to go about it. He said it's fire.
Yes. I
Just
agree.
fire. And then once you have fired,
Yeah.
done the podcast, created the YouTube, created
That's right.
the channel, or, created this beautiful meal, whatever you have done, then
Yeah.
you can readjust if you need
Yes.
to, right? But
Yeah.
until you fire, it all lives up here. And like you said, as a child, my child didn't have the words to communicate. I didn't know what he needed. I didn't really have it because I didn't understand me as well. Until you put it out there, nobody else can support you. And I love what you're saying about the leverage of a team. I learned this in another business that I could go make $125 an hour. I could pay my bookkeeper $25 an hour. The leverage for me was to go make the $125 an hour because she could do in 45 minutes what would take me 4 hours to do
Exactly.
with my
Totally.
books.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that I'm not a capable, talented, intelligent person. It just means when I sit down with figures, there's a high likelihood I'm going to turn them around, put them in the wrong place, get them to the point where my accountant goes, "Tanya, what did you do? Please stop doing this." She won't let me touch my books anymore. But what she was very affirming. She said, go do what you do. Go earn how you earn. Use your gift. Let me use mine.
Totally.
Because hers was numbers. So you've already given some great thoughts about it. What would you tell someone who is just really learning that we call it learning disability, which is not the truth. It is a different learning style.
Yeah.
So just really learning that they have dyslexia, that they're dealing with ADHD, that they're dealing with those types of things. And I even hate to say dealing, that they're gifted with these things. What would you tell them to go and do for themselves? What do they need to start thinking about?
Yeah, just start thinking that we are supposed to be different. And I think the biggest problem in society is that we're not normal, hence the neurodivergent, which is, I don't really like using it too tough, but it just encapsulates difference.
Mm-hmm.
So just absorb that you are different. Also absorb that you have strengths. Have a look at what you are gifted with and focus on that gift, because by you having dyslexia, autism, or any other thing, you will be more adapt to other things.
Mm-hmm.
And so take what you adapted to and you focus on that and you use that as your speciality. And you are lucky to have that, because so-called normal people, if you want to call it that, do not have that gift. You have it straight out of the box. We are not supposed to be the same. We are supposed to be different. So you must change that mindset from, oh, I'm dyslexic, or I'm autism, or I need medication, or I need this, that, and the other, from, okay, I am this way inclined. I mean, forget about the labels.
Yes.
I am this way inclined. I am able to focus in this way, or whatever that may be the case. So as I have that gift, what could I apply in my life to take it to the next level?
Absolutely. And find people that'll affirm you. I mean, one of the things that you said to me on the podcast when I described how I do my podcast, which is not totally dissimilar from yours, is you're like, do you know that very few people can do that? It hadn't crossed my mind that everybody couldn't do this. I mean, it had never crossed my mind. So take that thing that you can do that's different from everybody else and capitalize on it. Because like you said, you learned to communicate. You learned, especially from women, how to communicate, how to listen. And if you listen, it surprises me, Eli, that you don't like your voice. I would love to have you do the voiceover on my podcast.
I know. Everybody says that. I know. I mean, I've accepted it now. It took me a long time. And I must admit, I do think to myself, Eli, you are an idiot. Now I've accepted myself. I'm thinking, why didn't you use your voice more often as a voiceover, which is what I'm doing at the moment. So I am just capitalizing. See, this is another thing we're talking about. My voice is something positive. I can capitalize on that. The way I listen, which is what I was talking about. Just look at what you have strengths with. I can capitalize on that. How many people have the voice out of the box? Very rarely. How many people have a way to be able to see patterns? Very rarely. Yeah, it's taken me over 30 years to realize I have this gift. Now, I don't want anybody else to be in that position. Do not wait until a label or a person tells you that you can do something. And this is what I think people should understand. Just see where your strengths lie. Get a piece of paper, strengths, weaknesses, go with your strengths, and there's your business out of a box, or there's your tools out of the box. It can be as simple as that. But I do understand it is a journey depending on where you come from. It can be difficult.
Yes. Eli, tell us again your podcast, where we can find you, how they can listen.
Yeah, my podcast is Diary of a Dyslexic Strategist. You can catch me on devante.digital. Eli Devante, just put it in the search engine and I pop up all over the place, unfortunately. But depending on where you see it. So, and I'm sure she'll give you all the details in the description so you can able to catch me. But yeah, I mean, if you want to come on the podcast, you've got a story showing your success. I'm always willing to have it on. And And if I can help you from a business point of view, so you can stay focused, because I do masterminds too. So to help you with your business, I can help with that too.
Awesome. Eli, thank you so much for being on Sober on Purpose today. It has been a pleasure interviewing you.
And thank you for inviting me for the first time. Can you imagine? That's the first time, and I was shaking like a leaf. Visitors, I was shaking. Do you know? I'll be honest. I said to her, "I can't go in the podcast. I'm usually the host." And she said, "You can do it, Eli. You can." I thought, okay, let's get it over and done with. I suppose I want to be a speaker someday, so let's do that.
Awesome. Awesome job.
You, beloved listener, are creative, resourceful, and whole. Do you want to add more purpose to your sober journey? Do you want to make room for the new and make your dreams a reality? Apply today for a dream session. Go to tanyajoya.com. That's TANYAGIOIA.com and apply today. Let's get you dreaming about your new purpose.